There aren't many game studios that dare to challenge Sony on their home turf of narrative-driven single-player experiences, and even fewer that can hold their own against them. So what happens when a small game developer from France creates a completely new IP in this genre, filled with titles like God of War, The Last of Us, and Uncharted? Sounds like a suicide mission? Well, that's exactly what French studio Asobo did with A Plague Tale: Innocence. What is good, everyone, and welcome back to the Backlog project, where we play through a gigantic list of games to find out which of them is worth putting onto your backlog. Got a game you'd like to see on the show? Check the description of the video to take part in our weekly poll where you get to decide the next game I'll review. I, like many other gamers, enjoy myself a good story. And between fantasy, sci-fi, and many other genres, there's a lot to choose from. A setting that isn't often used in video games, however, is the Middle Ages. So when I heard that A Plague Tale was a narrative-driven game set in the late Middle Ages in plague-ridden France, I was certainly interested to experience this unique take on European history. I hope you're not afraid of vermin, because today you will join me in taking a deep dive into the rat-filled lands of A Plague Tale: Innocence. The game starts you off nice enough. Amicia, the heroine of this story, takes a walk through a beautiful forest with her father and her dog Leon. They talk a bit, you try throwing some stones with her sling, which also serves as a tutorial for basic controls, and suddenly the dog starts running off. Doggo just found a boar, and as the daughter of a renowned French knight, Amicia can't just not hunt an animal with her sling. This sequence doubles as a tutorial on the stealth gameplay, and let's just say I'm not really great at that. Once we hit the boar with our mighty stones, it runs away, with Leon hot on its tail. While following your prey, you notice that everything in the forest turned all black and slimy, and after a few ruined boots, you find the boar, or rather, what's left of it. Something must be in this forest, and Doggo isn't here. Oh, please, game, don't do this to me. Going even further in, you find Leon stuck in a weird black sinkhole, obviously hurt and afraid. Amicia, completely overwhelmed with what's going on, is trying to help her dog when her father arrives just in time to— Oh no, not the dog! Great. So it's that kind of game, huh? A Plague Tale certainly isn't shy to play on the gruesomeness of its setting. You will see a lot of sickness, death, and rats. An incredible number of rats, like millions of rats. It takes the concept of the plague and fuses it with a hint of fantasy to create an engaging and disturbing version of France in the Middle Ages. Add to that the story of two orphans fighting to survive in a world such as this while being hunted for their family name, and you've got yourself a recipe for emotional damage. Meet Amicia the Rune, a 15-year-old girl that has been tasked to protect her brother Hugo, whom she barely even knows because her mother kept him secluded from the rest of the family due to some illness Amicia was kept in the dark on. When people talk about strong female characters in games, they usually refer to women that had lots of character-forming experiences before the game takes place and are already badass. Amicia is a great character because she heavily differs from that concept. She's a smart and sheltered noble girl who gets thrown into life-threatening situations all the time, and often because she has to look out for a child that cannot take care of itself. Because of that, she sees incredible character growth and is relatable throughout the whole game. You don't just play through Amicia's story, you experience it, including all the heartwarming highs and gut-wrenching lows in her young life. Hugo, on the other hand, does what you would expect of a 5-year-old boy who has never had any human contact except for his mother. He cries a lot, throws fits at the most inappropriate moments, and often causes situations to become worse by not understanding the concept of cause and effect.
Mommy will protect us!
That's enough.
I want to see Mommy!
Mommy is dead, Hugo.
And while Amicia is definitely the character you will relate to more, I think Hugo is written just as well, and only by having both of the siblings experience the plot from their point of view does the game create a family-like dynamic between the characters that feels genuine. There are also some side characters that, while important to the plot and good characters in their own rights, don't develop on a level as deep as our two protagonists do. All characters are brought to life by some incredible voice acting, especially with Charlotte McBurney as Amicia performing on a level of emotion that I can only describe as absolutely beautiful. Another thing that's beautiful is the game's art direction. Sure, the game was created on a way tighter budget than some of its peers, but it makes up for it with some amazing scenery that ranges from plain gorgeous to grotesque, always depicting not only a realistic France, but also war, the plague, and all the suffering they cause not only to people, but also to nature. Innocence also often uses the siblings' state of mind as cues for scenic changes. Dark clouds filling a sky that was a beautiful orange just minutes before because Amicia loses sight of Hugo are just one of the many examples of this. Characters, and especially their faces, could use some work. It's not that they're bad, but they do carry that sense of uncanny valley with them. They're realistic, but not quite there to look natural. A Plague Tale's soundtrack relies heavily on strings, often very bassy and muted, to give the player a sense of danger and urgency, not unlike a horror game. But it also knows when to brighten up and support the few but very meaningful positive moments of Amicia's journey with some calm guitar pieces. As I alluded to earlier, Amicia's weapon of choice is a sling. Nothing fancy and certainly not all that deadly, but well suited for a stealthy approach the game requires of you. Combat mostly comes down to using the sling to kill enemies with a headshot, but since enemies almost never come alone and will be alerted to the sounds of fighting, you're often better off either slipping by unnoticed or using your surroundings to separate them so you can pick them off one after the other. There are multiple ways to do this, ranging from throwing stones as a distraction to putting out torches so the pyrophobic mice are free to rush your enemies. This gameplay stays true for most of the game, with some puzzles and extra features sprinkled in to keep things fresh. No matter how you approach the various challenges the game offers, your goal is always to not get caught by any enemies. If they catch either Amicia or Hugo, you will get a game over and have to start over from the latest checkpoint. That's right, Hugo is with you for almost all of the game and requires protection. He will learn some neat and useful things over the course of your journey, but most of the time, your job is to protect him and tell him what to do and where to go. There are even some sections where you get to play as Hugo, a fun idea given that you can take some really creative sneaky paths when you're playing as a 5-year-old, but the general gameplay of Amicia is far more fun than the novelty of playing as Hugo. The game offers multiple things that you can and should search all corners of France for: materials and collectibles. Materials are used for crafting your ammunition and upgrading Amicia's arsenal. The sling isn't your only means to defend yourself in the world of A Plague Tale. You can craft ammo to light or extinguish torches, erode the metal of your enemy's armor so you can deal damage to them, and even fire bombs that burn rats that are blocking your path. Upgrades include things such as making your sling silent, allowing for a way more aggressive approach, faster aiming, and a bigger pouch for ammo. The crafting system is admittedly simple, but it's undeniably fun to always be on the lookout for materials to get that next upgrade to make your journey just a little bit easier. Collectibles are split into 3 kinds: flowers, gifts, and curiosities, all of which are optional and are just there to deepen the lore and characters of the game. Flowers are usually found on optional paths and will, when found, trigger a dialogue between the siblings, with Hugo explaining the meaning of the flower to Amicia. His solitudes made him into a bit of a flower nerd, and as a small kid he's never too shy to prove his knowledge. Gifts and curiosities are simple collectibles that often lie around well hidden and trigger a monologue of Amicia, telling us a little about the item we just found. Gifts are usually directly related to Amicia and her companions, while curiosities are general items from the Middle Ages that serve to expand the lore and let the player understand in what kind of world this story takes place. there are a few minor things that dampen the otherwise great experience a little bit. First of all, due to the rats often not really having a set border to where they can and can't move, it's very easy to misjudge when you can safely pass a tight spot, which often results in death. Checkpoints are plentiful, so this isn't a big deal, but it can certainly be annoying. Second, some of the 17 chapters can feel a little bit dragged out, especially the ones where there is no immediate danger and the developers took their time with some more elaborate but way too easy puzzles. Third, there is a scene near the end of the game that has you fight head to head with multiple enemies and requires almost perfect execution to beat that is just not fun to play, and if Reddit is anything to go by, made quite a few people quit the game out of frustration. Don't do that, because seeing the ending is worth the effort, especially with the game having a direct sequel. Still, having difficulty spikes like that in an otherwise rather casual game can be frustrating and should be noted in a review such as this. With stunning visuals and a soundtrack that not only stands out, but matches every of the game's facets, A Plague Tale: Innocence more often than not belies its relatively small budget. The gameplay, while fun for stealth fans, is more on the simpler side, and a few nasty difficulty spikes might turn people off that aren't here for the story. But if you are, you need to play this game. Not only will you be engaged in the happenings of this fantasy take on middle-aged France from beginning to end, you will also experience one of the greatest coming-of-age stories in all of gaming. Seeing Amicia, a spoiled noble girl, face all of these challenges and grow into a woman that isn't just badass for being badass, but because she needed to become one in order to protect what is dear to her, is eye-opening and should be the gold standard for character development going forward. Have you played Plague Tale: Innocence before and are looking forward to the sequel? Or maybe you haven't and this review has made you curious about the franchise? Let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this review and want to help me appease to the mighty YouTube algorithm and also spread this video to a few more people, go ahead and hit that like button, it really helps out. Thank you. I'm also live on YouTube every Monday and Friday, so feel free to come by and say hi. Thank you very much for watching, and remember to always keep that backlog rolling.